please welcome Elizabeth Hughes. You know, Elizabeth works with people who are sick and tired of feeling sick and tired. And she helps them find the root cause of their illness so that they can transform their lives and get the health that they really love back again. I got that a little bit mixed up, but I think I got
It's
the
okay.
essence of it. Yeah.
You got
Oh
the
my
essence.
gosh. Welcome to Tuesday Talks.
Well, thank you. Thanks for inviting me. This is great fun.
I know it, isn't it fun? It's just
Yeah, it really
technology
is.
blows my mind these days. Yeah.
Yes.
So let's just dive in. Shall
Okay.
we? All right.
Yes, let's do it.
All right. So you know what? I'm just really curious about, you talk about finding the root cause of illness. And, you know, I know from my own perspective, I work a lot with natural medicine here in the tropics. I do a lot of plant-based medicines here. And it feels to me that Western medicine is really interested in treating the symptoms, putting a
Oh, yes.
band-aid over things instead of really digging into root causes. So I'm really curious about when you realized that finding the root cause of illness was what was really your passion and your purpose in life. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah, I would love to talk about this because it was a moment that was really transformative for me. About probably about 10 years ago, I was treating a woman who was in her 80s, but she was otherwise pretty healthy. But she had a sore on her lower leg that she had gotten from a really minor accident. She'd walked into the pointed corner of a dishwasher door and scratched it. But this spot kept growing and kept getting bigger and kept getting larger, despite the fact that she saw, I want to say, three different primary care doctors, multiple courses of antibiotics. She'd seen a vascular surgeon to, figure out if there was a blood flow problem. And finally, when nobody knew what to do, they sent her to wound care. So for 2.5 months before she saw me, she was going to wound care 2 times a week, getting the most sophisticated bandaging possible, the stuff you use on burn victims who, you're trying to regenerate skin. And this ulcer just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger instead of getting smaller. And so I guess out of desperation, they said, well, maybe the dermatologist, I'm a dermatologist, maybe the dermatologist can do something. And the woman came into my office and she sat there and told me everything. And I'm not a great actress, but I'm going to try here for a second. And he's like, kind of see what she did. So she told me everything that had happened. And then she went like this. Everyone tells me I'm old, so it'll never get better. And I immediately said, well, that's garbage, or something like that, something along those lines, because I knew that there was nothing about her age that would mean that she couldn't get better. And she perked up and she got bright and she was like, no one's told me that. Everyone has told me this isn't healing because I'm old. And I said, well, yeah, there's no reason why not. So for a long story short, there were a lot of other things going on with her skin. She developed actually a rash because of all of these bandages. And I just kind of said, let's do a clean slate, nothing but Vaseline and a loose gauze bandage, no tape on the skin for 3 weeks. Come back. And I said, we'll start. And I didn't expect anything to happen. And she came back 3 weeks later and the ulcer was gone. I had done nothing for her. Nothing medically. And she, seriously had had the best possible medical care. And I was like, oh my gosh, what just happened here?
Wow.
And so, I guess it just sort of gnawed at me for a while because, I'm a really busy doctor most of the time. And so one person, into a normal doctor, it's like, okay, that person's better. Let's move on to the next sick person. Let's move on to the next sick person. Let's just keep going. Yeah. But it just came back to me like there was something about what that woman believed that changed how her body responded to the care she was given. Or in my case, like the minimal care she got, but her body healed it. And so it made me realize and really look back at the biology of how the body functions and what the body's capacity for self-repair is. And and so now to get a kind of a little personal, this episode happened probably like 3-4 years after I'd been diagnosed with cancer. And the cancer itself was, if you're going to have cancer, it was the thing to have. It was one unpleasant surgery, but it was done, and there was nothing really more worrisome. But looking back at my life, even though I had a curable cancer, I felt so sick for so long. And I realized after I started looking at what might be keeping me from getting better and what happened to this woman was that there was this deep-rooted belief in me that cancer equals death. And, so as a doctor, I was actually handicapped because all I do is illness. And so this evolved into me working really specifically about what is belief? How does it work with the body? Why does it work? It's not science fiction. It's biological fact. Wondering why it's ignored in medical school. Those are things that I worked on, and now it needs to come out into the world. It needs to be something that is everybody knows. Everybody knows. So that's how I got interested.
Wow. Okay. So I've got so many questions because
Okay, lay them at
I've
me.
just been listening to some lectures by, I think his name is Bruce Lipton, Dr. Bruce Lipton, and about epigenetics.
That's exactly what we're talking about.
Oh my God, yes. And how
Yes.
belief, how our mental state of mind is causing us not to be able to. I didn't know we were going to get into this. And this is something I am so fascinated by, Elizabeth. I mean, really, because as we keep ourselves ill with depression or with anxiety or with all of these things that, kind of aren't normal, I think that it's only in recent times that we're learning how that is causing such great, dangerous harm to our bodies.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so I want to, this is fabulous. Go ahead, tell me.
Well, so I guess the first thing that I would tell people about beliefs and thoughts are, most people think beliefs are somewhere, I'm going to lean back, are way out here. They're somewhere outside, and they're fluffy and they're insubstantial and they don't mean anything. But there's only one place thinking takes place. It's in here. Like, you can't get away from it. You can't separate yourself from it. And so the idea that our thoughts don't affect us is just downright foolish. It's just downright foolish. But so many of us want to think that, and it's not questioned. It's like a big elephant in the room. It's the elephant wallpaper all over the room. And the second thing that I really tell people is that thinking is a physical act. That when you think, it's neuron connects to neuron, releases neurotransmitters. It's just as physical as anything else we do. It's as physical as digestion. It's as physical as the kidneys producing urine. It's as physical as the liver, detoxifying the blood. It's all a physical act. And there's something that goes on in our brain all the time, because we kind of measure metabolic activity based on how much blood flow is going to an area, how much of our oxygen is being used. And when we're at rest, 25% of our blood flow goes to our brain. Like, we have 25% of the oxygen consumption at rest is to our brain, even though our brain is only about 3% of our weight. So something metabolically is happening there all the time. And the thoughts each thought we have has a unique biochemical signature that also involves, it's not just, two nerves connecting, it's neurotransmitters and hormones that then affect everything else, because those are the basic regulators of how we function.
So, first of all, I want to give a shout out to KK Karen Kenny, who's actually taking some fabulous notes right now.
She does good
Yes,
notes.
so
Yeah.
thank you so much. I loved seeing the link that you just popped in there about epigenetics and about Elizabeth's webpage. Yes, awesome. And I also want to say hi to Carol. It's so good to see you. I think this is an awesome topic for you to be listening to tonight. I talk to us now. You just talked to us about some really scientific stuff. Can
Right.
you put that in layman's terms so that
Yeah.
somebody who doesn't understand neurons and all of those scientific things can just understand? I mean, what I'm hearing you say, my translation is, our thoughts are not something that are just these, like you said, fluffy things out there in the ether, that they are absolutely affecting our physical health on a very
Absolutely.
profound level. Is there
Yeah.
anything else that you want to say just to make it really simple for people to understand how profound this is?
Well, I'll say two things. So I'll start with a little bit of science and then I'll make it personal. So I'm just going to share one quick study done at, I believe it was NYU a few years ago. And a bunch of researchers just asked people off the street, more or less, um, how would you rate your health? And it was kind of a 1 to 5 scale between
Okay.
poor and excellent. And they asked everybody what those were, and nobody said poor, because these were people who were just otherwise healthy. So nobody said poor, but everyone said something like fair or so-so, all the way up to excellent. And then they exposed these volunteers to the virus that gives you flu. And they found that the people who rated their health as excellent got half the rate of flu of other people. And that included the people who said, my health is very good. So just the idea, my health is excellent, was enough to protect you from half. And if people said their health was fair, they had about almost 3 times the rate of catching the flu when directly exposed to the flu virus. So that's what your belief does. If you believe you are fundamentally healthy, then your body responds that way.
And
then to make it,
excuse me for interrupting, but
yeah,
we've been hearing this phrase more recently. I mean, it's been around for a long time, but fake it until you make it. So when we begin to really switch our thinking into whatever it be, positive thoughts of being healthy, thoughts that, we're abundant, whatever. I mean, it's almost like this whole idea of law of attraction on steroids.
yeah, yeah. It totally is. And what I love about it is, okay, I'm going to take my pre-discovery brain and post-discovery brain.
Okay.
My pre-discovery brain would have said, oh, law of attraction. Yeah, right. Hocus pocus. My post-discovery brain says, oh no, it's so real. It's so real. Yeah. and and so, another thing, and everybody who's watching could do this, because we've all experienced a situation where a feeling of distress or anxiety or upsetness or sadness has affected our health. As I said, I'm a dermatologist, and teenagers, finals, acne, we've all experienced it. Every time I have a final or a paper due, boop, 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 the acne comes out. We've all experienced it, like every time there's bad news, we might get a feeling in the pit of our stomach, or we like can't eat, or we, feel like we want to vomit, or things like that. Plenty of people will experience, when they're anxious or nervous, they're itchy. And so all of us have had one of these experiences where your emotional state or your thoughts actually physically affect your body. And we've seen it. we've seen it. Every time I have to give a presentation, I have to go throw up first, That's and so the question for me now is that's why are we willing to accept that we can get acne as a teenager, but we don't then accept when that same function works everywhere else? Like, is there a limit to like, oh, that only works for acne, but for everything else, I need pills? you know?
Mhm.
So it's very real. Almost everybody has something like that. Like my boss yells at me and and I know my knees are going to hurt more.
Fascinating. Fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like we are living at such an amazing time right now because it's not it's as if finally science is able to study this and actually give us data on it, whereas before, like you said,
Yeah.
it felt like hocus pocus. But now we
Hmm.
can, now there's actual experiments and scientific evidence, and a lot of us need that. A lot of us need
Yeah.
that verification that, oh my God, it's not just I'm going to feel better, like quote unquote, be happier if I can switch up my thinking, but we're actually going to be healthier. Like on such a
Yeah.
huge level. I love it. I really just think this is so fascinating. So I'd love to know if you have any kind of, one of the things I love to do with my viewers on Tuesdays is offer them an opportunity to see how you work. And I wondered if you have any tip or any exercise that you could walk us through so that we actually have something to try and to see for ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one of the things about getting to the root cause of illness is to look oftentimes at something you assume, like cancer equals death, or my genes control my health, or something along those lines. So, everyone out there, if you want to, just take a moment and sort of think about something along that you've learned from parent society, things like that. Doctors are a great source of that misinformation, like if this is chronic, there's no cure for it, which is garbage. Uh, you know, my genes are the only thing that controls my health. Everyone in my family is overweight, so there's no way I'm ever going to lose it. So take a moment and sit with that
Okay.
question and then ask yourself, how does that feel? Where is that resonating in you? And I've got to tell you, just rattling off all these hypotheticals, I'm so tight in my chest. Just thinking about some of those thoughts is just, making me go, and these aren't things that I think anymore.
Right.
But
Right.
exactly, exactly. And so there the question would be, after you've seen that, you can see what even these thoughts that might not even actually affect any one of the individual viewers right now, see how that resonates in the body. What does it do? What do you feel? Tight? Do you feel sick? Do you feel shut down? Do you get tunnel vision? Any of those things.
So almost like doing a body scan, like
Almost like doing a body scan. Yeah. Well,
but
you
okay,
you
go
look
into
at.
that belief, that old belief, that belief that X equals Y, and
Mhm.
see where that's sitting in see what your reaction is.
Absolutely,
Mhm.
absolutely, and that's a good way of knowing sort of how a thought can affect your body physically.
Mm. So tightness in the stomach, or like just a little feeling of nausea. Like for me, I'll be really honest with my viewers, for me, that limiting belief for such a long time, and I have to say it is dissipating the more I learn about epigenetics and learn about thought processes. But for me, it's my family has always been overweight, so I'm always going to be overweight. So that's huge for me. That has been something that
Yeah,
followed me around. And when I think about it, it's tightness in my chest and like just this upset tummy that just kind of comes right up, right there it is.
yep, Yeah, right there. And most people have been running around with feeling that bad feeling. You know, the belief has already been implanted and the bad feeling's always there. And they're just, it feels normal after a while, that it's just something you don't recognize as that's not how life is supposed to feel.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, once we've identified where it's feeling in our body, what can we do with that? Because
Well,
that sounds
you
like
know,
that's powerful observation right there.
right, right. So, you know, there are a bunch of different ways you can do it. And for people who are more physical or more, you know, kinesthetic, or people who work with breath can breathe into that area and just breathe into it to help dissipate it. Breathing helps everything. One of the chief causes of pain is lack of oxygen. Chief cause of brain fog, lack of oxygen. So making sure that you're breathing enough, because most of us don't breathe right and we're just not getting enough oxygen there. And when you get enough oxygen, you'll actually think straight about these things. And then
So,
sometimes,
so wow, that's a huge tip right there. I just want to stop you just for a second because breathing deeply helps us think straight. That's
yes,
huge. Okay. I just wanted to
yeah.
repeat.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's like, it seems like so so obvious to me that I should say that. Yeah, when we are in a fight or flight response, even a little one, the amount of oxygen that goes to the front of the brain, where most of our higher processing and logic goes, shuts down by 50%. So we're
Wow.
actually starving our brains. And so consciously breathing more consistently and consciously breathing will actually help you think straighter.
That's fabulous.
Yeah.
You know, last night, I had lost power for 3 days in a row here on the farm, and it was horrible. And I was getting really frustrated and really stressed out about it. And I wasn't able to sleep because I was kind of in the back of my mind waiting for the servicemen to come. And I really needed to sleep. And you know, that is exactly what I did. And I know this is a little bit off
Mm-hmm.
topic, but I laid
Okay.
in bed and I just asked myself to breathe deeply and just consistently and just really focusing on the breath. And lo and behold, I got myself back to sleep.
Great. Oh, there's nothing like it. Just it's magic. It's magic.
Mm.
And I know that because you know, I'm going to talk a little bit about my webinar later, but when I on my webinar I'm going to share like my problems with anxiety that happened after the cancer, and which was a mess. But I got to the point where I could not take more than 3 deep breaths without pain. I was so accustomed to not breathing that my diaphragm literally hurt when I tried to move it again. So
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. Wow. Okay, so just to recap, this exercise sounds just amazing. So what we want to do is we want to go in and we want to look at the belief about our illness, something that we've always kind of thought about it. So for me, it was my family's overweight, so I'm always going to be overweight. For you, it was cancer equals death.
You're right.
And these are really big thoughts. And so your suggestion is to go inside, find out where that tension is living, find out where that resistance or that feeling is, and then breathe into it or find ways to um, maybe even I want to say get to know it, get familiar with it,
Absolutely.
feel it,
Absolutely. And
make a
right.
friend, say thank you for keeping me safe, and let's talk about this. Let me see how
Right.
I can let you go.
Right. Oh, definitely. And so that's when I work with people one on one. Yeah, we do exactly that and can help to dissolve some of this beliefs that you don't want. You and change them into beliefs that you do want.
So, well, this is a great segue. I'd love to know how you help your clients overcome this feeling of feeling sick and tired, of feeling sick and tired, and really
Yeah.
getting to the core of their illness.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think about it as a kind of a three-part process, but the steps don't perfectly line up necessarily. But first off, understanding it in your head, like really not, you don't have to go to med school, you don't have to understand science, but you really have to understand and believe what you're doing. So I think about it as like understanding with your head. And then working on the feeling with your heart part of it, where a lot of people want, let's see how I can put this. A lot of people want, let's say, good health, but from a standpoint that they believe they can never have it. So that there's some emotional distance from the idea of good health. And sometimes overcoming that can be even trickier than than undoing high school biology. So that you really are okay with that. So, every time a person says, "Oh, I really hope that new medicine works," there is the little belief in there that it's probably not going to, and you're just wishing for the opposite, but that doesn't work. So, really feeling that things are going to be true for you. And then finally, it's kind of getting it into your life, into your bones, making it starts off as a little bit of trying to make it a habit, which can be a little boring sounding, but eventually it becomes just how you live.
Yeah.
And that's the exciting part.
Elizabeth, this resonates so much with the work that I do with my clients because
Uh-huh.
it is very much about coming inside and feeling ourselves not from this overthinking critical mind, but from this place of being more heart-centered and actually teaching
Hmm.
them how to move from head to heart so that they can feel more. And you just said something that was just so important to me. Let me just see if I can get it back. Um, the practice. And it is for me, I find it's that
Yeah.
exercising that little muscle that we've never been taught how to use. And so to have,
Right.
have that little daily practice. And it does sound really boring at first, but the fact is, once you start it, it becomes such a way of life. And it's almost like you don't want to miss a day of that daily practice anymore because that's what keeps you
Right.
feeling so buoyant and so good. And you miss 5 days, you go on vacation and you toss it out the window and you're kind of miserable. But then you come
Right.
back and you get back to it. And
Uh-huh.
that's when all the belief, that's when, it's like the fuel for your best life, your most healthy life, for all of it. So I just want to say how much I resonate with what you've just saying. And I didn't realize that we had such synergy within this conversation.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
just so thrilled. I mean, really
Yay. Yeah. Yeah.
incredible.
And I want to come back to the idea of habit. You know, what I work on with people, once they're able really to communicate with their body and know what's good, is most people think of healthy habits as something that's going to be yucky, like, oh, I have to run, or I have to do like, you know, eat only cabbage soup or something like that. And I'm totally against that. Totally against that. There's so much about what you do in terms of laughter and connecting with friends and having some creative outlets and making sure the space you're in is beautiful. That's the stuff that you really need to do as your habit. And that, when it's pleasurable, it's, you don't have to force it.
Oh my God, I couldn't agree with you more,
Yeah,
right? I mean, seriously, it's
right.
like finding that joy in life again. And when you can find those little nuggets of joy and bring those into your daily practice, that's that that's the reason to live. Oh my God. It's
Right.
yeah,
Exactly.
I love it.
Yeah,
Do
exactly.
you have a daily practice? Or do you have things that are just really in your life that are non-negotiable at this point? I'd love to know.
Couple things that are non-negotiable is laughter. There was a long time where there was no smiling and no laughing at all in my life. It was a mess. And the other thing that's really non-negotiable is walking my dogs. And which sounds silly, but it's got to be something. Even though I live in Seattle, in the city, I live half a block from a big park, and so we can go through a night, and it's a very wild park, not a forest park. And so just walking with through the trees, even in the rain, gotta go. Sometimes I'm dragging the dogs. Come on, you gotta go out in the rain, but making sure that there's that connection with nature, which is a real switch for me. I mean, I'm a inside a square walls hospital person, clean, tidy, or at least that's what I thought I was. And that's become so important for me, so that if there is a time, if I miss it for just like a day, I'm in bad shape. Don't want to be around me.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so incredible. For me, my negotiables are to wake up and do a heart-centered meditation in the morning, really start my day by moving from head to heart, so that when I get out of bed, I'm leading from my heart and not from this
Yeah, that's
overcritical mind.
good.
And when I don't do that, I'm on the computer, I'm working right away, and my day is not as joyful as when I just take those few minutes to center myself and enjoy it. And a lot of times I'll either do that from bed, or I'll do that outside on the terrace surrounded by birdsong, and that is when it's
Oh,
elevated and most like magical. So yeah, those little daily things, and they don't have to be anything that's arduous or hours of,
right,
it can just
right.
be like a 5 minute little thing that you super enjoy, but that sets you up for success and
Oh,
for that
yeah.
positive energy. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
So what else do you feel like we need to let these viewers know before we wrap up today? Because you are such a wellspring of amazing information.
Thank you. Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to share with folks. Well, I guess I'm actually running a webinar, and um, I don't have the ability to stick it into the comments right now with just how things going. But people can find me at my website, and I'm going to be running a webinar later this month, really about what I call the sickness myth. And we've talked about it, but it's this overarching feeling that in some ways our bodies are fragile, finicky, nobody can figure them out, and fatally flawed. That is the root obstacle to what causes our bodies not to flourish in the way they're designed to.
Oh my gosh. Well, I want to go to that. So I hope you'll put
Okay.
the link to it in the comments.
I will do that later. I
Yeah,
will,
once we
I
wrap up.
cannot
Oh,
multitask on Facebook. That's
I know
like not happening.
it's not so easy. Wow, I think that's great. And so is that like an hour long
Yeah.
webinar? Uh-huh. Wonderful.
Yeah, hour-long webinar, and I'll be able to take some comments and stuff like that if people want to ask questions too.
Awesome. Well, and let's just put that out. I don't know how many people are watching right now, but we're going to be here for a couple more minutes. So if anyone that is viewing has a question for Elizabeth, please go ahead and type it in the comments. I'm looking and trying to keep up with things. And hey, Carrie, it's so nice to see you.
Oh, hey.
Yeah. So yeah, now how can people get in touch with you? You're going to put your website. Do you have an email that you'd like for them to be able to contact you
Yeah,
at, or a telephone number, anything that you'd like to share?
the email's great. It's Elizabeth at elizabethhughesmd.com. That's me. So
Yeah. I think that Karen Kenny actually put your website in the comments earlier. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think
So it's
that
yeah, it's Elizabeth
that's
Hughes,
already there, which I'm
MD.
really
Is just that it. Yeah. And and if somebody's really interested in exploring this idea of what their what their limiting beliefs might be, I do offer a free consultation. So if you're interested, you can always contact me at my email address, and I'd be happy to get you signed up. Because if nothing
awesome.
else,
Awesome. That is
I kind of see
just
what
sounds
I'm
like an
supposed.
amazing offer.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry.
I kind of see what I'm supposed to do in my life is to make sure that as many people know about this as possible. So,
And for my own knowledge, where can I and anyone who's watching learn more about this whole concept of epigenetics? I think it's, and I guess I don't know if that's even the right term to use, but I'm so fascinated by how thought controls really a lot more than we ever thought it did. I'd love
oh
to
yeah.
know if you have a favorite book or a favorite
Oh yeah.
resource.
Yeah, so I have the book. You mentioned Dr. Bruce Lipton, and he really is the father of epigenetics. He wrote a book called The Biology of Belief. I don't think you have to be a doctor to do to read it. It's quite readable for the average person. I mean, he's like an ex-Stanford professor, so he could be really, up here. But he boils it down into things that are incredibly practical and kind of his own epigenetic experiment with a medical school class. I don't know if you got to that part in the book yet, but it's
I haven't read it.
no.
No, I just saw him on an interview and
Oh,
have been so fascinated by, because it's almost this sounds crazy, but instinctively I've been feeling this is so important, and now I'm starting to
hmm,
see like scientific evidence coming out of the woodwork. It's like all around me, and here we are talking about it tonight. It's
yeah,
fascinating.
yeah. So yes, absolutely. I would say Dr. Lipton's book, The Biology of Belief, is the greatest thing to read.
Okay. All
And
right.
there's another book that, and I'll type these out and I'll put them in the comments later,
Oh,
is
that's
a book
great.
called, yeah, When the Body Says No. And it's by a Dr. Gabor Mate. He's out of Vancouver, Canada, and he's great. He's a family practitioner and who really, when the body says, uh-uh, not going any more further, and what symptoms are and how that relates to health. So,
Awesome. Awesome. Oh my God. This has been such an
yeah.
insightful conversation. Yeah, it's been really fabulous. And I know that sometimes as we get a little bit longer in the Facebook Live, things start to get a little chunky, and I'm starting to feel there's a little lag time. So that's usually about the right
Yeah.
time to say thank you. And
Goodbye.
well, I would absolutely love to invite you back again another time and talk more about this topic,
Oh, it
because
would be fun.
I just think I think the more that we can get this message out to people, I really believe that we're going to, it's not just the emotional health, but it's the physical health too. And my mission is really to help stop the suffering, and that happens to be a lot of emotional suffering. But I think if we can stop the suffering in illness of any kind, that's such a gift to humanity. So I just really want to thank you, Elizabeth, for all the service that you're doing right now in your
Thank
practice.
you.
I mean that so sincerely. Absolutely. We don't need any more band-aids. We want to get to the root cause. And it just doesn't feel like it's
Right.
rocket science anymore. And it's more about just shifting our beliefs and our allowing, giving ourselves permission to believe something different.
Right.
So thank you
And
so much.
along the same lines, oh, you're welcome. Along the same lines, people talk about there's a shortage of doctors and I can't see a doctor. And I don't think there's too few doctors. I think there's too much illness. And that's the real way to sort of solve a whole bunch of problems is for everybody to realize that they're fundamentally equipped for health.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
I love. All right. Well, let's wrap this up. And I just, again, thank you so much. Please go ahead after we end the live and put your comments
I certainly will.
in there. And I just want to remind all my viewers that I'm also doing a webinar on the 22nd. It is on fall equinox intention setting. So I will also put that in the comments if you do want to, set your intentions for, let's say, stellar health before the end of the new year. Let's talk about some ways that you can take 7 simple steps to set really solid intentions for yourself before we get to the end of the year. So thanks everybody for watching. Thank you, Elizabeth, for being here.
Thank you, Lynn. It's so fun.
We'll do it again. Much fun. I love my Tuesday talks. I just love all the guests that I get to bring on. So we will talk soon, and thank you again, and thank you again, everybody. Have a great
Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye.